It is often said that we shouldn't judge a book by its cover, that the true value of a person lies deep within their character. But in a world so often dazzled by wealth and status, it's a lesson we sometimes have to learn the hard way. This is a story about a love tested, a family's hidden past, and the quiet, unshakable strength of a grandfather who proves that true power doesn't always glitter. How could a girl from a poor family possibly play the part of a society wife? Could a child raised by her grandparents, with no parents of her own, have received any proper lessons in etiquette? These cruel, insulting words echoed through a high-end restaurant in Boston. 27-year-old elementary school teacher Chloe Anderson was subjected to this humiliating tirade from her boyfriend's mother. But what Eleanor Price didn't know was the true identity of the grandfather who had raised the very girl she was scorning. She had no idea that a terrible secret, one deeply connected to her own family from 22 years ago, was lying in wait. How dare she insult my granddaughter? She will pay the price. In that moment, the eyes of a seemingly ordinary grandfather transformed, gleaming with a cold desire for vengeance. And so began the systematic retribution against Richard Price and his family. Just who is this grandfather, and what fate awaits them all? Before we begin, please consider subscribing and liking this video. It truly helps us create more content for you. Inside a luxurious hotel restaurant in Boston's Back Bay, the light from the chandeliers seemed to sparkle with an extra brilliance that evening. It was 6 o'clock in the evening, and the gentle sound of laughter from diners filled the air. But at one particular table, a meeting with a very different atmosphere was just beginning. 27-year-old elementary school teacher Chloe Anderson sat stiffly in her chair, her palms sweating with nervousness. This was the day she was meeting the parents of her boyfriend of 3 years, Ethan Price, for the very first time. Chloe had been preparing for this day for weeks. She wore the simple yet elegant pearl necklace her grandmother had given her, paired with a crisp white blouse and a modest navy jacket. She had checked her reflection in the mirror countless times, desperately hoping to make a good first impression. Ethan gently squeezed her hand and whispered, "It's going to be fine. Once my mother meets you, I know she'll love you." Chloe managed a small smile and nodded, but a knot of anxiety was still tightening in the pit of her stomach. Just then, she saw a middle-aged couple enter the restaurant. Ethan raised his hand and called out, "Mom, Dad, over here." Chloe's gaze followed his. Eleanor Price, though 52, had a meticulously maintained appearance. She carried a designer handbag and was adorned with flashy accessories. Beside her, her 55-year-old husband, Richard Price, had the sturdy build appropriate for his age. "Mr. and Mrs. Price, it's a pleasure to meet you." Chloe stood politely and bowed her head in greeting. Eleanor scanned Chloe from head to toe before sitting down with a cold expression.
"Ah, yes.
You must be Chloe." From her very first words, there was an unmistakable chill. Richard offered a slightly warmer smile, but Eleanor's gaze remained icy. An awkward silence hung over the table as they looked at their menus and ordered. Chloe nervously took a sip of water. The real conversation didn't begin until after the food had arrived. Eleanor picked up her fork and asked, "I hear you're an elementary school teacher. Is that right?" "Yes, that's correct. I'm a third-grade teacher at a school here in Boston." "I see. And what do your parents do?" Chloe knew this question was coming, but her heart sank nonetheless. "They passed away. They were in a car accident when I was 5 years old." "Oh, is that so? Then who raised you?" "My grandfather and grandmother raised me." Eleanor's expression shifted subtly. Sensing the awkward tension, Ethan quickly interjected, "Chloe absolutely loves children, and she has such a passion for education." But Eleanor showed little interest in her son's words.
"So, I suppose that means there isn't much of a family fortune then."
"What can you really do with a teacher's salary?" Chloe's face flushed red. "Mother, that's not appropriate," Ethan said, looking at his mother with an embarrassed expression, but Eleanor was unstoppable. "What's not appropriate?" I'm just being realistic. Do you really think financial stability isn't important in a marriage these days? Richard chimed in to support his wife. That's right. In this day and age, family background is crucial. Our Ethan has a great job at a good company and is on track for a promotion. Eleanor looked Chloe over once more and said pointedly, "To be perfectly honest, I believe our Ethan should be with a daughter from a much better family. How could a girl from a poor background possibly fulfill the role of a wife in our circle?" Chloe's hands began to tremble slightly. But Eleanor's insults didn't stop there. And could a child raised by her grandparents, an orphan, truly have received the proper etiquette education? Do you think class is something that can be built in a day? Mother, you're going too far. A note of desperation crept into Ethan's voice, but Eleanor paid him no mind. Things like etiquette and manners are learned in the home from a young age. What could a grandfather and grandmother possibly teach? Could they really raise a child without parents properly? Other diners at nearby tables began to turn their heads. Chloe's face had gone pale, but Eleanor continued. Our Ethan was raised in a good home. His father runs a construction company, and I am active in several social circles. But you, Chloe, you must admit that you are simply not in the same league as our family. Tears welled up in Chloe's eyes, but they soon transformed into a different emotion, a mixture of anger and pride. I'm sorry, but I cannot allow you to speak about my grandparents that way. Chloe's voice trembled, but it was firm. You can't allow it? How bold. But you need to accept reality. Eleanor crossed her arms, a mocking smile on her face. Marriage isn't just about two individuals. It is a union between families. Do you honestly think someone from your background could ever fit in with our family? Richard added, Your mother is right. It's tough in this world without the right background. We have to think about our Ethan's future. Chloe pushed her chair back and stood up. I'm sorry, but I must be leaving now. Chloe, wait. Ethan, flustered, tried to stop her, but Chloe had already grabbed her purse and was walking towards the restaurant's exit. Eleanor muttered with a look of satisfaction, just as I thought. That's her level. She runs away at the slightest provocation. Ethan stood up abruptly and said to his mother, Mother, how could you do that? Chloe is a truly wonderful person. A wonderful person, perhaps, but she doesn't fit with us. From now on, be more careful about who you choose to see. Chloe stepped out of the restaurant and into the cool night air, fighting back tears. Her steps felt heavy as she walked towards the T station. The humiliation she had endured tonight left a deep wound in her heart, but what angered her most was the insult to the grandparents who had raised her. On the train ride home, Chloe stared out the window, lost in thought. Was she really not good enough? Was the love of her grandparents truly insufficient? But she quickly steeled herself. No. The grandparents who raised her were the most wonderful people in the world. It was already past 9 o'clock in the evening when Chloe arrived home. As she opened the front door, her grandfather, Samuel Anderson, and grandmother, Margaret, were waiting for her in the living room. The moment they saw her expression, they both knew something had gone wrong. Chloe, dear, how did it go? Her grandmother asked in a worried voice. Chloe couldn't hold it in any longer. She fell into her grandfather's arms and began to cry. Grandpa, am I really not good enough? Were those people right about me? Samuel gently patted Chloe's back and asked softly, Tell me what happened, sweetheart. Start from the beginning. Chloe recounted every detail of the meeting. She told them about Eleanor Price's cold stare, her insulting words, and even Ethan's lukewarm defense. Her grandmother, Margaret, held her hand and comforted her. Don't you pay any mind to people like that. Your grandmother knows better than anyone what a wonderful person you are. But Samuel's expression grew colder and colder. What exactly did that woman say about you? Chloe repeated Eleanor's words verbatim, from the comment about a poor girl playing a society wife to the question of whether a child raised by grandparents could have been educated properly. Samuel's eyes began to change. The usual gentle and kind grandfather was gone, replaced by something else entirely. Chloe, Grandpa is going to find out who these people are. Grandpa, just forget about it. There's no need for you to go through any trouble over something so pointless.
No.
Anyone who insults my granddaughter like that must pay the consequences. There was a firmness in Samuel's voice that was completely unlike his usual tone. Margaret looked at her husband and asked, "Honey, are you really going to do this?"
Yes.
They have to pay the price for looking down on our Chloe. That night, after Chloe had gone to bed, Samuel went into his study. It was a room normally filled with books, but behind one of the bookcases lay a hidden space. Samuel carefully moved the bookshelf aside, revealing a small safe. He turned the old dial and opened it. Inside were things Chloe had never seen before. There were business cards that read Supreme Court Justice Samuel Anderson, various medals and commendations, and even photographs of a younger Samuel standing with a former president. Samuel looked at each photo and sighed deeply. It's been such a long time. Margaret quietly opened the study door and came in. "Samuel, are you really going to use your old connections again?" Samuel looked at his wife and said, "Margaret, I spent my entire life as a judge, and I learned what justice is. But after I retired, I just wanted to live as a normal grandfather. But things are different now. I cannot let those people who humiliated our granddaughter get away with it." Margaret took her husband's hand. "I also met many people during my time as an elementary school principal. Let's make that family realize what a true education really is." Samuel smiled at his wife. "That's my Margaret. So, you'll do this with me?" The next morning, Samuel went out for his usual neighborhood walk, dressed in his simple, everyday clothes. But in his mind, a plan was already forming. He decided he would thoroughly investigate Richard Price and Eleanor Price to find out exactly who they were and what their background was. After his walk, Samuel returned home and took out an old address book. It was filled with the contact information of the network he had built over 40 years in the legal world. His first call was to a former student, David Miller, who is now a prosecutor. "David, it's Samuel Anderson." "Judge Anderson, it's been such a long time, sir. How have you been?" "I've been well, but I'm calling because I have a favor to ask." David sensed something unusual in his mentor's voice. "Anything, sir. Just tell me what you need." "There's a construction company owner named Richard Price. Could you look into him for me in detail?" "Richard Price? Do you have any general information about him?" "He runs a company called Price Construction, and his wife's name is Eleanor. They should be living somewhere in the Boston area." "Understood, sir. When do you need this by?" "As soon as possible, please." "And David?" "Yes, Judge. Don't mention this to anyone. This is a personal matter." "Of course, sir. I will handle it with the utmost discretion." The second call was to a junior colleague in the financial sector. "Mark, it's me." "Mr. Anderson, sir. It's been too long. It's good to hear you're doing well."
Thank you, Mark.
"I'm calling because I have a question about a banking matter." "Please ask away. I'll help in any way I can." "There's a construction company run by a man named Richard Price. Would you be able to look into the company's loan status?" "Within legal bounds, of course." "Yes, sir. I'll check right now." "Just a moment." After a moment of typing, he said, "I'm seeing a Price Construction here. It appears their loans have increased significantly recently." "How much?" "The total is around $5 million. He used real estate as collateral, but it looks like his business has not been doing well lately." Samuel's eyes turned cold. "Interesting."
Thank you, Mark.
"Oh, and please keep this confidential as well." "Yes, of course, sir." The third call was to an acquaintance in the media. He was a former journalist who is now an editor-in-chief. "Mr. Harrison, this is Samuel Anderson." "Judge Anderson, it's so good to hear your voice. How have you been?" "Well, thank you. I'm calling with a small request. Just say the word." "Could you find out some information for me on a construction business owner named Richard Price and a woman named Eleanor Price?" "What kind of information are you looking for?" "Everything from their past to the present, especially things they might want to keep hidden." A note of tension entered the editor's voice. Understood. When do you need it? Would tomorrow be possible?
Yes.
I will do my absolute best to find out. After finishing his calls, Samuel looked out the window. The Boston city lights spread out before him. How dare they look down on my granddaughter? Samuel's voice was filled with a cold fury. Margaret sat down next to her husband and asked, Samuel, are you sure about this? Are you worried this might become too big of an issue? Samuel took his wife's hand and said, It's all right. I have always worked within the confines of the law. This time will be no different. I will only uncover the truth through legal means. The next morning, Samuel's phone rang early. It was David Miller, the prosecutor. Judge Anderson, I have the results of the investigation. I think it would be best to discuss this in person. Samuel left the house in his usual simple attire, but his destination was not the local market. He headed to the top floor of a skyscraper in downtown Boston, a place he used to frequent. As the elevator ascended, Samuel's mind was a whirl of conflicting thoughts. He had wanted to live a quiet life in retirement, but here he was getting involved in this kind of business again. David Miller greeted him with a deep bow. Judge Anderson, it's an honor to see you again after all this time. It is a privilege to have you here. Thank you, David. Now, what did you find? David placed a thick file on the table. It's all in here, sir. All the information on Richard and Eleanor Price. Samuel began to flip through the file. The first page contained Richard Price's basic personal information. Born in 1970, currently the chief executive officer of Price Construction. But as he turned to the next page, Samuel's expression began to change. Judge, Richard Price has a rather dark past. David began to explain cautiously. There was a major incident 22 years ago. What kind of incident? It was the collapse of a school construction site due to faulty construction. Several people were injured, including the site manager and subcontracting staff. Most notably, a married couple passing near the site at that time was severely injured. Samuel looked closer at the file. The couple's names were Michael and Laura Anderson. They had a 5-year-old daughter, and both died from their injuries. Samuel's hand trembled slightly. It can't be. Keep reading. At the time of the accident, Richard Price tried to shift all responsibility to the subcontractor. However, as definitive evidence emerged, the shoddy construction work was exposed. Despite that, he did not receive proper punishment. Why not? It was due to lobbying and a cover-up. At the time, Richard Price had close ties with local politicians. In the end, he got away with just a fine. When Samuel turned the next page, he found something even more shocking. The surviving family member of the victims was the daughter of Michael and Laura Anderson, Chloe Anderson, currently 27 years old, working as an elementary school teacher. Being raised by her grandparents, Samuel and Margaret Anderson. Samuel dropped the file and sank into his chair. David asked with alarm, Judge Anderson, are you all right? What's wrong? This girl, Chloe Anderson. Yes? Is she someone you know, sir? Tears welled up in Samuel's eyes. She's my granddaughter. My granddaughter. David was stunned. Then, Judge, are you saying you were the victim's family back then?
Yes.
Chloe is the granddaughter I raised, and she lost her parents because of Richard Price. David was beginning to understand the whole situation. So, your request for this investigation. That's right. That family insulted my granddaughter. And now I find out that they were the very people who destroyed our family 22 years ago. David opened the file again and said, Judge, what's more important is that this case is not completely closed. What do you mean? The investigation at the time was not conducted properly, and a lot of evidence was covered up. If a reinvestigation were to take place, Richard Price could receive a prison sentence for professional negligence resulting in death. So, you're saying prosecution is still possible?
Yes.
Legally, it's entirely possible. The problem is the evidence. Samuel said firmly, I will find the evidence. David, could you do me a favor? Anything, sir. Samuel's voice became as cold as ice. Prepare all the legal procedures so that we can reinvestigate Richard Price. And gather all the materials from the case 22 years ago. Yes, Judge. And what would you like me to do about Eleanor Price? Apply as much pressure as possible on Eleanor Price and her family within legal bounds. In what way? Social isolation, financial pressure, and exposing the truth through the media. Of course, everything must be within the confines of a law. David Miller nodded. Understood. But Judge, this isn't about personal revenge, is it? Samuel looked out the window and muttered, This isn't revenge. It is the realization of justice. It's about bringing the truth that has been hidden for 22 years to light. And it also includes making them pay the price for insulting my granddaughter. David nodded in understanding. Yes, Judge. I will do my best to assist you. But does Miss Anderson know about all of this? Not yet. But she will soon. She will know the whole truth. Samuel looked at the file again. They dared to insult my granddaughter and were the ones who killed my children. In that instant, the gentle grandfather had completely vanished. In his place stood the cold, formidable former Supreme Court Justice, Samuel Anderson. After leaving the office, Samuel immediately made a second call, this one to his acquaintance in the media. Mr. Harrison, it's Samuel Anderson. I have an additional request regarding the matter we discussed yesterday. Yes, Judge. Please go on. The man, Richard Price, caused an accident 22 years ago due to shoddy construction. Please dig into this case in detail. And also, investigate Eleanor Price's current social activities and circles. Understood. But Judge, is there a possibility this story will be reported in the media? It might be reported when the time is right. But for now, please just quietly gather the information. Yes, I will do that. When he returned home, Samuel called Chloe. Chloe, it's Grandpa. Grandpa, are you okay today? Your voice sounds a little different.
I've fine.
But Chloe, Grandpa is going to be busy for a few days. Is something wrong? It's nothing serious. I just have to meet up with some old friends. Don't you worry, just focus on your work. Okay, I will. You take care of your health too, Grandpa. Samuel hung up the phone and said to Margaret, Margaret, it's starting now. Are you really going to go through with it?
Yes.
I'm going to make them pay for the humiliation our granddaughter endured. And I will uncover the truth from 22 years ago. Samuel's comprehensive plan began that very night. It was a flawless strategy, mobilizing the network he had built over 40 years in the legal world. The first step was economic pressure. Samuel called an old friend who was a former bank president. Mr. Peterson, this is Samuel Anderson. Samuel, my old friend. It's been far too long. How have you been? Well, thank you. I'm calling because I have a favor to ask. Anything for you, Samuel. Just say the word. There's a company called Price Construction. Could you review their loan situation for me? Price Construction? You mean the one run by Richard Price? That's the one. But why the sudden interest? Samuel paused for a moment before saying, There are personal reasons. I'll explain in detail later. For now, just confirm whether the company is complying with loan regulations. Understood. I'll have an answer for you by tomorrow. His next call was to a junior colleague who was influential in the construction industry. Mr. Daniels, this is Samuel Anderson. Mr. Anderson, hello, sir. It's good to hear you're well. Thank you. Are you familiar with a company called Price Construction? Yes, it's a mid-sized construction firm, run by Richard Price. Why do you ask? I'd like you to advise the companies that do business with them to reconsider their contracts. For what reason? I can't go into detail right now, but you'll find out soon enough. Meanwhile, changes began to stir in the Boston socialite circle that Eleanor Price frequented. The group's leader, Victoria Davenport, suddenly began to treat Eleanor with a cold attitude. Eleanor, I'd appreciate it if you didn't attend next week's gathering, Victoria said coolly.
What?
Why so suddenly? Did something happen? Eleanor asked, flustered. It's just the consensus of the members. It seems it will be difficult for us to continue activities with you. But I haven't done anything wrong. Victoria replied with a stern expression. There are some rumors circulating about your husband's company. Some not-so-good rumors. In truth, Victoria's father-in-law was a longtime friend of Samuel's. The previous night, he had called her. Victoria, is a woman named Eleanor Price part of your social club? Yes, father. Why do you ask? It would be wise to distance yourself from her. Is something wrong? I cannot say much, but a big problem is about to arise. It would be best for your group if you draw a line now. I understand, father. I will do as you say. At Richard Price's company, strange things began to happen one after another. A contract termination notice suddenly arrived from Summit Holdings, one of their major clients. Sir, we have a huge problem. An employee burst into the office. Summit Holdings just called to terminate our contract.
What?
Why, all of a sudden? They won't give a clear reason. They just said their company policy has changed. Richard's face went pale. Summit Holdings accounted for 30% of their total revenue. What about our other clients? That's another problem. We're having trouble reaching them. In fact, Samuel had been contacting various figures in the construction industry, all of whom had connections to him from the past. Mr. Thompson, this is Samuel Anderson. Judge Anderson, it's been a long time. How have you been? I'm well. By any chance, are you doing business with a company called Price Construction? Yes, on a small scale. Would you be able to reconsider your business with them? I have a feeling some bad news might be coming out soon. Is that so? Well, if you say so, Judge, I will do so. A few days later, a similar incident occurred at another one of Eleanor's gatherings. At a golf outing, the other members began to give her cold looks. Eleanor, how is your husband's company doing these days? One member asked meaningfully. Oh, it's doing well. Same as usual. Why do you ask? No reason. I just heard the construction industry is struggling lately. But Eleanor could sense a strange atmosphere from the other members' glances. It was definitely different from usual. Samuel's third step was pressure through the media. He called the editor-in-chief again. Mr. Harrison, how is that matter I requested coming along? Yes, Judge. I've looked into it, and some very interesting things have come up. What have you found? It turns out Richard Price caused a rather significant accident 22 years ago. It was a collapse due to shoddy construction, and there were fatalities. But he never received a proper punishment. Why not? It seems he had connections to local politics at the time. He minimized the incident through lobbying. Does he still have that influence? No. Most of those connections are gone now. If this were to be re-examined, it would likely cause a considerable stir. Samuel looked satisfied. Then prepare to write the article. But don't publish it just yet. I will let you know when the time is right. Understood. But Judge, do you have a personal connection to this case? I do. But I cannot go into detail right now. Everything will be revealed soon. A few days later, small cracks began to appear in Richard and Eleanor's daily life. Richard, something strange is going on. Eleanor said to her husband. What's strange? The way people are looking at me has changed. They're suddenly keeping their distance at my gatherings. Is it just my imagination? No, there's definitely something going on. I feel like something is happening that we don't know about. After a month, the Price family's situation began to deteriorate rapidly. Honey, the bank called, Richard said with a heavy expression when he returned home. What about? They're demanding early repayment of the loan. The $5 million? By when? They want it repaid within 3 months. Eleanor's face turned pale. Why so suddenly? We haven't missed any payments, and the collateral is more than sufficient. I don't know either. The bank manager wouldn't give a clear reason. He just said their internal policy has changed. Richard sank onto the sofa and sighed. Where are we going to get $5 million? It's hard enough just keeping the company running. To make matters worse, other clients began to terminate their contracts one by one. Sir, another contract termination notice has arrived, An employee reported urgently. Who is it this time? Sterling Builders and Apex Industries. Both were long-term clients. What reason did they give? They just said it was unavoidable due to company circumstances. They didn't provide any further explanation. Richard clutched his head. This is strange. It's all happening at once. It's as if someone is targeting us. You think so too, sir? I've been getting the same feeling. This seems planned. The situation at Eleanor's social clubs grew even more severe. Eleanor, I'm sorry, but I don't think you'll be able to attend our gatherings anymore, Victoria said bluntly.
Why?
What did I do wrong? Eleanor asked, flustered. It's not that you did anything wrong, it's just the atmosphere. The other members all agree. Please, just tell me what's going on. Unfavorable rumors are circulating about your husband's company. Something about causing an accident in the past. Eleanor was shocked. That was a very long time ago, and the matter has already been resolved. But Victoria was firm. In any case, we have to consider the image of our group. Please try to understand. Eleanor returned home and told her husband, Richard, this is really strange. People are talking about that accident from 22 years ago. What? Why would they bring up something from 22 years ago all of a sudden? I don't know. It's clear someone is spreading that story. Richard's expression darkened. Just then, their son Ethan came home. Dad, Mom, what's wrong? You both look upset. Ethan, strange things keep happening at the company. Can you think of anyone I might have offended? Offended someone?
What are you talking about?
A thought suddenly struck Eleanor. Could it be because of that girl, Chloe? Chloe? What could Chloe possibly do? Ethan asked, bewildered. No, it couldn't be her. What could she do? A poor girl raised by her grandparents. Eleanor scoffed, but a seed of doubt was growing in her mind. But it's too much of a coincidence. All of these things started happening right after we met her. Ethan started to feel uneasy as well. Now that you mention it, it does seem a little strange. The next day, an even bigger shock awaited Richard at his company. Sir, we have a tax audit, an employee reported urgently. A tax audit? Why so suddenly? They said they received an anonymous tip, alleging tax evasion. Richard was dumbfounded. Have we ever evaded taxes?
No, sir.
All our taxes have been paid accurately. Then why now, all of a sudden?
I don't know, sir.
But the investigators are looking into things very thoroughly. Richard was now certain. Someone was intentionally tormenting them. That evening, the family held a meeting. Eleanor, I'm sure of it now. Someone is trying to ruin us, Richard said firmly. Then who would do such a thing? Eleanor asked. I don't know, but it's clearly someone with considerable power. To be able to move the banks, our clients, and the tax office all at once. Ethan cautiously spoke up. Could it really have something to do with Chloe? What could she possibly do? Eleanor still refused to believe it. But if Dad is right, it has to be someone with a lot of power. A thought suddenly occurred to Richard. Did we ever find out what her grandfather does?
No.
I just heard he was an ordinary old man, Eleanor replied.
We need to check.
A person capable of orchestrating all of this would not be an ordinary man. Ethan took out his phone. Should I call Chloe and ask? Not yet. We don't have any concrete evidence. We can't make a rash move, Richard stopped him. Let's just watch the situation a little longer. Meanwhile, Chloe remained completely unaware of everything that was happening. She taught her students at school, as usual, and had dinner with her grandparents in the evening. Grandpa, what have you been so busy with lately? It seems like you're going out more often than before, Chloe asked curiously. Oh, I've just had some things to do with old friends. It's nothing to worry about, Samuel answered naturally. Is your health okay? Of course. There's nothing for my Chloe to worry about. But Chloe sensed something different in her grandfather's eyes. There was a sharpness, a determination that wasn't usually there. That night, Samuel called prosecutor David Miller. David, what's the status of the proceedings? Judge, everything is proceeding smoothly. It seems Richard Price's side is quite flustered.
Good.
Then let's move on to the next step. Are the preparations for the reinvestigation complete? Yes, sir. All the materials are ready. We can begin at any time. Then let's start tomorrow. It's time to reveal the truth that has been hidden for 22 years. Understood, Judge. Samuel hung up the phone and looked out the window. Now, only the final step remains. The Price family was still in the dark, but soon, everything would be revealed. At last, the decisive day arrived. Early in the morning, the doorbell rang at Richard Price's house. When Eleanor opened the door, she saw investigators in suits standing there. "We're from the prosecutor's office. Is Mr. Richard Price at home?" Eleanor's face went white. "Yes, just a moment. Honey, the prosecutor's office is here." Richard hurried to the door. "Yes, I'm Richard Price. What is this about?" "We are here to question you in relation to the deaths of Michael and Laura Anderson 22 years ago." Richard and Eleanor were simultaneously shocked. The case from 22 years ago? But that was already closed. "New evidence has been discovered, and we are reopening the investigation. Will you please accompany us?" After Richard left with the investigators, Eleanor, in a state of confusion, called Ethan. "Ethan, something terrible has happened. Your father was taken away by the prosecutor's office."
What?
"Why?" "They said they're reopening the investigation into that accident from 22 years ago." "Then it's true. Someone really was targeting us." Ethan's voice was trembling. "But Mom, do you remember who the victims were back then?" "It was a couple named Michael and Laura Anderson." "Why? Then what was their daughter's name?" "I don't know. Why are you suddenly asking about that? Do you think her name might have been Chloe Anderson?" Eleanor was momentarily speechless. At the prosecutor's office, Richard was learning a shocking truth. "Mr. Price, the family of the victims from the case 22 years ago has requested a reinvestigation." "The victim's family? Who are you talking about?" "The daughter of Michael and Laura Anderson, Miss Chloe Anderson, and her grandfather, Mr. Samuel Anderson." Richard was stunned. "Did you say Samuel Anderson?"
Yes.
"Former Supreme Court Justice Samuel Anderson." "A Supreme Court Justice?"
Yes.
"He was active in the legal field for 40 years. He still holds considerable influence." Richard's mind went blank. "Are you telling me that that girl, Chloe, is the granddaughter of a Supreme Court Justice?" "That is correct. And she is also the person who lost her parents in the accident 22 years ago." Meanwhile, Eleanor was at home with Ethan, trying to piece things together. "So, you're telling me that the girl I insulted was the daughter of the couple we killed?" "Mom, you can't say it like that. We didn't kill them, it was an accident." Ethan tried to make excuses, but Eleanor knew the truth. She knew that faulty construction was the cause. But the really shocking thing is that her grandfather was a former Supreme Court Justice. Eleanor's voice trembled. "I insulted the granddaughter of a Supreme Court Justice." "Mom, so all the things that have happened until now?"
Yes.
"It was her grandfather. He did all of this to ruin us."
Just then, the home phone rang.
When Eleanor answered, it was a call from a news agency. "Is this the wife of Richard Price, the Chief Executive Officer of Price Construction? We'd like a comment on the shoddy construction case from 22 years ago." Eleanor, flustered, hung up the phone. But soon, calls started pouring in from other news outlets. "Ethan, it's all over the news now. What do we do?" Eleanor fell into a state of panic. "Just calm down for now. Let's discuss it when Dad gets back." But deep down, Ethan also knew that it was all over. That evening, the story broke on the news. CEO of company responsible for couple's death in 22-year-old shoddy construction case faces reinvestigation. Richard Price of Price Construction suspected of evading punishment through lobbying. Victim's family revealed to be the granddaughter of former Supreme Court Justice Samuel Anderson. Upon seeing the news, Eleanor completely broke down. "It's really over now. Everyone knows." Ethan tried to comfort his mother, but Eleanor just kept muttering to herself, "How could I have been so foolish? to look down on the granddaughter of a Supreme Court justice for being poor. And we were the ones who killed her parents. The next morning, Richard returned home. He looked utterly exhausted. "Honey, what happened?" Eleanor asked. "It's all over. The reinvestigation has officially begun, and I'm going to be indicted on charges of professional negligence resulting in death." "So, you'll go to prison?" "Most likely. All the evidence they covered up 22 years ago has surfaced." Richard sank onto the sofa. "And the company is completely ruined. All our clients have terminated their contracts, and the bank is demanding immediate repayment." Eleanor sat down next to her husband. "So, we'll have to sell the house too?" "We'll have to pay off all the debts." Ethan looked at his parents and said, "Dad, Mom, what are you going to do now?" Richard let out a deep sigh. "First, I need to apologize to the victim's family. It's 22 years too late, and then I will admit to everything in court and accept my punishment." Eleanor also nodded. "I need to apologize to that girl too. I finally realize how wrong I was." But Ethan's heart was a complex mess. What's going to happen with Chloe and me now? Richard looked at his son. "Ethan, you need to walk a different path from us. Get away from all of this and start a new life." That night, Eleanor called Chloe, but she couldn't summon the courage to speak, repeatedly hanging up and redialing. Finally, she sent a text message. "Chloe, I am so truly sorry. I would like to meet and apologize in person." After seeing the text, Chloe asked her grandfather, "Grandpa, what's going on?" "A woman named Eleanor Price contacted me, asking to meet." Samuel hesitated for a moment before saying, "Chloe, I think it's time I told you everything." "What do you mean?" "Sit down. There's something your grandfather has been hiding from you." Chloe sat next to her grandfather with a nervous expression. "The truth is, Grandpa started all of this. And I also found out that a man named Richard Price is deeply connected to your parents." A few days after hearing the whole truth from her grandfather, Chloe decided to meet with Eleanor. The location was a quiet cafe. Chloe arrived first and was waiting when Eleanor walked in. But the glamorous woman from before was gone. In her place was a haggard, weary-looking person. "Chloe." Eleanor approached her cautiously and greeted her. "Hello." Chloe's response was cold but polite. "Please sit." Eleanor sat down across from Chloe and said, "First, thank you for agreeing to see me. To be honest, I was too ashamed to even see your face." "Chloe, I am so truly sorry." Eleanor bowed her head deeply in apology. "I finally realized how ignorant and arrogant I was." "Please stand up." "You don't need to do that here," Chloe said calmly. But Eleanor kept her head bowed. "I don't deserve to stand up. I never properly apologized for the accident that killed your parents 22 years ago. And as if that wasn't enough, I insulted you so horribly." Tears briefly welled up in Chloe's eyes, but she quickly composed herself. Just then, Ethan walked into the cafe. "Chloe." Ethan approached cautiously. "Ethan, you're here too." Chloe looked at him. "Chloe, I'm so sorry. I'm just as much at fault as my mother. I went along with her words, and I failed to see your true worth." Ethan's voice was filled with sincere regret. "You also thought my mother wasn't wrong, didn't you? Please be honest." Ethan lowered his head. "Yes, I did. I was so foolish back then. I was heavily influenced by my mother and didn't know what it meant to be a truly good person." "I see." Chloe smiled sadly. "But I know now. I know what's truly important." Ethan looked at Chloe with a pleading expression. "Chloe, can't we start over? Now that we know everything." Chloe shook her head. "Ethan, it's too late. If all of this hadn't happened, you would have continued to be swayed by your mother's words." "That's not." Ethan tried to object, but he knew Chloe was right. "It's true. It's already over. Our values were different from the very beginning. We've only just now realized that for certain." Chloe stood up from her seat. "And Mrs. Price," Eleanor looked up at her, "if you are truly remorseful, then you and your husband should pay for your crimes. And from now on, please do not judge people by their outward appearance." As Chloe was about to leave the cafe, she stopped. Oh, and one more thing. What my grandfather did was not simple revenge. Then what was it? Eleanor asked in a trembling voice. It was justice. He brought the truth that was hidden for 22 years out into the light. And he also made you pay the price for insulting us. From now on, live your lives with sincere repentance. With those final words, Chloe left the cafe. Eleanor and Ethan sat in silence for a long time. A month later, everything was settled. Richard Price received a 3-year prison sentence in his first trial for professional negligence resulting in death. The full truth of the incident from 22 years ago was revealed. Eleanor also received a fine for her involvement in covering up the incident. Price Construction went completely bankrupt, and the family lost all their assets. Their large house in Boston was sold at auction. Eleanor had to move into a small studio apartment. She sold all her flashy designer clothes and started wearing plain ones. But strangely, her heart felt more at ease than before. She realized how much she had been living in vanity. Ethan quit his job and moved to a smaller town. It was difficult for him to continue living in Boston. He resolved not to repeat his mother's mistakes and started a new life. Living quietly in a small city, he was learning what a person's true value was. He would occasionally call his mother to check in, and they would encourage each other. Hello, Mom. Are you doing okay? Yes, Ethan, I'm doing well. I've started volunteering recently, and it's brought me a lot of peace. That's good to hear. I'm living diligently here, too. Meanwhile, Chloe met someone new. It was a pediatrician, Dr. Liam Carter, who had just started working at the school. Liam had no interest in Chloe's family or background. He liked Chloe for who she was as a person. Miss Anderson, the children really adore you. I love them so much too. I think teaching children is my true calling. Liam was moved by Chloe's genuine nature. I feel so lucky to have met someone like you. Dr. Carter, I can see how much you love children too. It seems our values are the same. 6 months later, Chloe introduced Liam to her grandfather. Grandpa, there's someone I'd like you to meet. Oh, is he a good person? Yes, he's a wonderful person. I think you'll like him too. Samuel smiled brightly. Well then, when shall we meet him? He'd like to meet you this weekend. Excellent. I will see for myself. But this time was different. From their first meeting, Liam showed genuine respect for Chloe's grandparents. You both did such a wonderful job raising Chloe. She is the warmest and most sincere person I have ever met. Samuel looked at Liam with satisfaction. This man will be able to make our Chloe happy. Liam was interested in Chloe's character, not her past or family background. I really admire the way you are with the children, Chloe. As a pediatrician, I meet a lot of kids, but I've never seen anyone who loves them as genuinely as you do. Thank you. I see how warmly you treat the children when you care for them, too. Their love deepened as they recognized and respected each other's values and character. Margaret said to Samuel, Honey, I think she's really met a good person this time. Yes, that young man's eyes are so clear and honest. You can see how much he treasures our Chloe. I can finally rest easy. A year later, Chloe and Liam's wedding took place. The venue wasn't extravagant, but it was filled with a warm atmosphere. Chloe's fellow teachers, Liam's hospital colleagues, and people who genuinely wished them well gathered together. The most special part was that Samuel himself was officiating the ceremony. The wedding began with the entrance of the bride and groom. Chloe wore the pearl necklace her grandmother had given her and a pure white wedding dress. Liam, in a neat tuxedo, smiled brightly at Chloe. The sound of applause filled the air. Samuel stepped onto the podium and began his address. I would like to thank everyone who has gathered here today. I am Samuel Anderson, the bride's grandfather, and I have the honor of officiating the ceremony. Samuel's voice was warm yet dignified. True love is not about conditions or background, but about the heart. Looking at the two people getting married today, I am certain of this. Chloe and Liam fell in love with each other's character and values, and that love has borne fruit today. The guests listened intently. And true class is judged by how one treats others. A heart that respects and cares for others, that is what defines a good character. Chloe looked at her grandfather, tears of happiness streaming down her face. Liam also listened to Samuel's words with a moved expression. Here today, I am certain that my granddaughter has met a truly good person. Liam came to love Chloe for who she is, not for her appearance or family background. And Chloe was moved by Liam's warm heart and his love for children. This kind of love is what you can call pure love. The applause grew louder. I sincerely wish that the two of you will continue to respect and love each other and build a happy family. After the wedding, Chloe, Liam, Samuel, and Margaret had a moment to themselves. Grandpa, Grandma, thank you so much, Chloe said, hugging them both tightly. What is there to thank us for? Our Chloe has always been a wonderful girl, Samuel said, looking at his granddaughter. It's because of the love and guidance you gave me. Liam also paid his respects. Sir, ma'am, please continue to look after Chloe. I will treasure her for the rest of my life. Samuel took Liam's hand. Thank you. Please take good care of our Chloe. Now I can truly watch over her with a peaceful heart. Margaret also shed tears. Chloe, live a truly happy life. That's all your grandmother wishes for. Meanwhile, Eleanor heard the news of Chloe's wedding on the television in her small apartment. Teacher Chloe Anderson marries pediatrician. Grandfather, former Supreme Court Justice Samuel Anderson, officiates. Eleanor's heart was filled with a mix of emotions. She wanted to congratulate her, but at the same time, she felt a wave of guilt. Still, I'm glad she's living a happy life, Eleanor muttered to herself. I must continue to live a life of repentance. Eleanor was now working at a local community service center, helping neighbors in need. It was awkward at first, but she gradually began to feel a sense of fulfillment. She was learning what true values were. Grandma, here is your meal for today, Eleanor said, handing a lunchbox to an elderly woman who lived alone. Thank you. It's rare to see such a kind young person these days. Eleanor smiled at the old woman's words. I'm the one who should be thankful. I'm learning so much. Ethan also heard about Chloe's wedding from his new town. His heart was heavy, but he genuinely wanted to wish her well. He sent Chloe a congratulatory text. Chloe, congratulations on your wedding. I hope you live a very happy life. And I'm sorry. Chloe thought for a moment after seeing the text and then replied, Thank you. I hope you are doing well too, Ethan. It was a short exchange, but there was no hatred between them. They had simply gone their separate ways. Ethan had also met someone new in his town. She was a simple but sincere person. You're a really good person, Ethan, his girlfriend said. You seem to know that what's on the inside is more important than outward appearances. Thank you. It's something I learned after making a lot of mistakes, Ethan replied sincerely. 6 months later, Chloe and Liam announced that they were expecting their first child. Grandpa, Grandma, we have some good news, Chloe said with a bright smile. Good news? Samuel and Margaret looked on with anticipation. We're having a baby. Both of them were overjoyed. Really? I'm going to be a great-grandfather? Samuel couldn't hide his joy. Now we'll truly have 4 generations living together, Margaret said, her eyes welling up with tears. Let's raise our great-grandchild well, passing down the love that Chloe received. Liam also greeted the elders. Sir, ma'am, thank you for your continued support. We will raise our child to be a warm and wise person, just like you. A year later, a healthy son was born to Chloe and Liam. They named him Noah. Samuel held the newborn baby and cried. Thank you so much for letting me see my great-grandson. Margaret also looked at the baby and said, I hope this child grows up to be as wise and warm as his great-grandparents. Chloe looked at her baby and made a promise. Noah, Mommy will pass down all the love I received from Grandpa and Grandma to you, and I will raise you to be a person who stands for justice, just like your great-grandfather. Liam also held his son and said, Noah, Daddy will also raise you to be a wonderful person like your great-grandfather, and to have a warm heart like your mother. 2 years later, Chloe was selected as Teacher of the Year at her school. Her genuine love and dedication to teaching her students were recognized. "Congratulations, Miss Anderson," her colleagues cheered. "Thank you. It's all thanks to the children," Chloe replied humbly. "We can really feel how much you love the children. That must be why they follow you so well." Chloe's educational philosophy was simple: to accept and love children for who they are. It was the greatest lesson she had learned from her grandparents. Liam also became a respected doctor at the hospital. His warm-hearted approach when treating children moved many parents. "Dr. Carter, thanks to you, my child isn't afraid of the hospital anymore," one mother said gratefully. "The most important thing is that the children feel comfortable," Liam replied with a smile. One day, 5 years later, Samuel said to Chloe, "Chloe, there's something Grandpa wants to pass down to you." "What is it, Grandpa?" "It's not money or property. It's something much more precious." Chloe asked curiously. "It's the ability to see people for who they are. The wisdom to distinguish between a truly good person and one who is not. And a heart that knows what justice is. These are the greatest legacies I can give you." Chloe took her grandfather's hand and said, "Yes, Grandpa. I will treasure it and pass it down to Noah as well." Samuel looked on with a satisfied expression. "Yes, that's how you pass it down from one generation to the next." That evening, at a family gathering, Samuel gave his final words of advice. "Chloe, Liam, and our little Noah, there is a story Grandpa wants to tell you." Everyone looked at Samuel. A person's true value lies not in the environment they were born into or the possessions they have, but in how they treat other people. And true love is given from the heart, without conditions. Please, never forget this. Chloe, her eyes welling with tears, said, "Yes, Grandpa. I will never forget it for the rest of my life." Liam also nodded. "We will be sure to pass on your teachings to Noah." Samuel's final monologue continued. "Power and status exist to protect the weak and to realize justice. And true class does not come from looking down on others, but from a heart that respects and loves them." Through a long journey of 22 years, all the characters had come to their own realizations. Chloe found true love, and Eleanor began a new life through sincere repentance. Ethan was also living diligently, determined not to repeat his mother's mistakes. They all came to understand the value of true character. Margaret provided a warm, concluding thought. The true purpose of education is not to teach knowledge, but to cultivate good character. I am so proud to see our Chloe living her life practicing this. And now, I am so happy that Noah will also grow up in such an environment. The family looked at each other and smiled happily. Their faces, filled with the understanding of true values, shone with a peaceful contentment. It was a story that expressed the hope for a world where everyone is judged by their character, not their origin or wealth, and a message that true love is given unconditionally from the heart. It was a moving conclusion where truth hidden for 22 years was revealed, justice was served, and everyone was able to make a new start. If you enjoyed today's story, please don't forget to subscribe, comment, and turn on notifications. Your heartfelt comments give us so much strength. Thank you so much for watching.